Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWAS. We are into the divisional round here. Wildcard weekend was not kind to me, as you probably heard. I talked about it for a while. Rough. Sunday specifically was rough for me. That being said, since then, I've had a nice week. I got the Rams and under on Monday. I've also had a good basketball week. So since the disaster that was Wildcard weekend, I've had a nice little week. So hopefully the positivity keeps rolling. Obviously, as I'm sure you know, we got 2 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday. Going to go through the 2 Saturday games in this video. Let's do it.
I mean, is Cooper Rush worth 2.5 points?
I would hope Quinn Ewers put up a decent stat line against Arizona State. If he didn't, we have a real problem.
You can say the same thing about Creighton. Okay, they had the one good game against Kansas at home.
When Toast talks about the kicking market, it's like some earth is flat shit. Andy, true or false, this is going to be a dog walking.
Dog walking. This is my dog walking of the day. I think it's going to be very ugly. Dog walking. I think this is going to be ugly.
Hey, get the sauce. First up, we got Houston on the road in Kansas City. The Chiefs are laying 8.5 points at home. Total sitting at 41.5. Let's take a look at the pie charts. And according to the data, I mean, action's coming in pretty split in this one. About 55% of the tickets on the Chiefs. Money coming in 50-50. So action's pretty split according to this data, which you should obviously take with a grain of salt. So let's get into this one, and we'll start with some playoff trends. And shocker, betting the Chiefs in the playoffs has been profitable. You didn't need me to tell you that. 12-4 against the spread in their last 16 playoff games. 9-3 against the spread in their last 12 playoff games at home. So betting the Chiefs in the playoffs has been profitable. But again, you didn't need me to tell you that. Also, their last 10 playoff games at home at Arrowhead, 3-6-1 to the under. So trending to the under slightly in their home playoff games. Houston, however, in their last 4 road playoff games, 0-4 against the number. So historically, if you're a trend person, you're probably taking the Chiefs and you're probably taking the under. But we're not interested in the past. We're talking about this matchup right here. So let's get into it. Houston's offense against Kansas City's defense. Obviously, the Chiefs have the edge on this side of the ball. Houston offensively, 21st in yards per play, 31st in success rate. The Chiefs defense, 9th and 13th. No question, the Chiefs defense has been significantly better than the Texans offense so far this year. And as I'm sure you know, Houston's offense is not coming into this one full strength. There's no Tank Dell. There's no Steph Diggs. These are not new injuries. They've been out. Also, Joe Mixon on the injury report, and that's brand new. He actually got hurt. He hurt his ankle at practice on Wednesday. So this is a brand new addition to the injury report. From what I'm reading, he should play. But that's a bit concerning that Joe Mixon's been added to the injury report. On a positive note, Shaq Mason is back at right guard for Houston. He didn't play last week against the Chargers, so there's something positive for the Texans offense. But something negative for the Texans offense is the entire Chiefs defense is going to be playing in this one. And I mean the entire Chiefs defense. That includes Jalen Watson at corner. He's been out for a few months now. He is back for this game. So this Kansas City Chiefs defense is going to be at full strength here. And we saw a drop-off in production when Jalen Watson got hurt, by the way. He's their second best corner behind McDuffie. In weeks 1 through 7 with Jalen Watson on the field, they were allowing just 17.2 points per game, 5.5 yards per play. Since week 8 without Watson, 20.3 points per game, 6 yards per play. So no question, we saw a drop-off in defensive production from the Chiefs after Watson got hurt. Getting him back is huge. And look specifically at their numbers against the pass. With Watson in weeks 1 through 7, 6.7 yards per pass attempt allowed, 81.8 average opponent passer rating. Without Watson since week 8, 7.2 yards per attempt, 97.2 opponent passer rating. So not a good start here for Houston offensively. They're going on the road to Arrowhead against a very good Chiefs defense that's at full strength. And this is a Texans offense. When we're talking about this passing attack, it's been trending in the wrong direction pretty much the entire second half of the season. First 8 games of the regular season, they were averaging 255 passing yards per game, 7.3 yards per attempt, 93.7 pass rating. I mean, success rate close to 55%. Those numbers look pretty good the first 8 games of the regular season. Then Diggs got hurt, Nico Collins got banged up, and then later on, Tank Dell got hurt. And this Texans passing attack, I mean, like I said, it's just been trending in the wrong direction. The last 9 games of the regular season, they averaged 6.6 yards per attempt, average pass rating under 79. So it's been a struggle for C.J. Stroud and the Texans passing attack. Now, we do have to give Stroud some credit. He did play pretty well against the Chargers. This is a decent-looking stat line. 22 of 33, 282 yards, a touchdown, a pick, and 90.7 pass rating. Nothing wrong with those numbers. Those are solid numbers. If you watch that game, The story of the Texans-Chargers game was not CJ Stroud beat the Chargers. It was Houston's defense beat the Chargers. I mean, it was pretty much Houston's defense looked dominant. Justin Herbert laid an egg. Not that C.J. Stroud played poorly. Not that I'm trying to take credit away from C.J. Stroud. But if you watch that game, your reaction wasn't, wow, C.J. Stroud looks excellent. That's certainly not the type of game it was. Houston's defense looked excellent. C.J. Stroud looked okay. But it's kind of hard to forget what we saw in Week 16 on the road at Arrowhead. C.J. Stroud, 23 of 39, 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, and a 73 passer rating. I mean, yes, you could argue without those 2 picks, Houston's right in that game, maybe even have a good shot at winning that game without those 2 picks, but drop back to pass 39 times, only 244 passing yards in the game. That's not going to cut it here on the road at Arrowhead against a Chiefs defense that's now healthy. Now, you would think that this Chiefs defense is actually a pretty good matchup for C.J. Stroud. They do run a decent amount of man coverage, over 32% frequency, 9th most in the NFL. C.J. Stroud, significantly better looking numbers against man coverage, 12th in yards per attempt, 15th in pass rating, 3rd in turnover-worthy throw rate. You can see his numbers against zone coverage. They're pretty much terrible. 39th in pass rating against zone coverage. So the Chiefs run man coverage 32% of the time. You're still going to see a lot of zone coverage, but at least that's something. He should see a decent amount of man coverage. Problem is, he should also see a lot of too high safety looks, over 61% frequency from the Chiefs, 2nd most in the NFL. He's probably also going to see a lot of cover 2. Since Week 12, the Chiefs are running cover 2 over 23% of the time, 5th most in the NFL in that span. CJ Stroud against too high safeties, terrible. 32nd in passer rating, 38th in completion percentage. CJ Stroud against cover 2, pretty terrible. 37th in passer rating, 31st in yards per attempt. So it's definitely tough to make a positive argument for CJ Stroud here. I mean, I guess you can point at this. The Chiefs have been somewhat vulnerable to the downfield throws this year. I mean, they're 19th in defensive efficiency against the deep pass. CJ Stroud does like to throw the ball downfield. 11.7% of his pass attempts are considered deep passes. So I guess that's something. The problem is he just really hasn't connected on those deep throws this year. Look at the passer rating. This is from the regular season. 57.7 passer rating on those deep passes. And specifically in the Chargers game, he attempted 5 deep throws that traveled 20 or more air yards. He was 205, 71 yards and a pick. So, I mean, yes, CJ Stroud likes to throw the ball downfield. He just hasn't had much success doing it this year. And this is a Chiefs defense that's playing really well against the pass. In their last 4 meaningful football games, obviously I'm taking out the Week 18 game against Denver. Bo Nix lit them up, but the Chiefs rested their entire team. In their last 4 meaningful football games, they're allowing just 5.9 yards per pass attempt, an average opponent pass rating under 68, just 206 passing yards allowed per game. And yes, one of those games was against Jameis Winston in 20-mile-an-hour winds, but you got CJ Stroud in there, you got Russell Wilson in there, you got Justin Herbert in there. So it's not like they've seen complete scrubs. There's some decent quarterbacks in there. These teams couldn't do shit against the Chiefs defense in their last 4 meaningful games, and that's without Watson. Now they got Watson back at corner as well. So it's, like I said before, it's kind of tough to make an argument for CJ Stroud going off here on the road in Arrowhead. Now, as far as Houston running the football, this is where it gets a little tough. I mean, they are averaging 5.3 yards per carry in the last 5 games of the regular season. Success rate per rush is below 32%, though. That's terrible. And it's kind of the same story on Wildcard weekend against the Chargers. 168 rushing yards, 4.9 yards per carry. Success rate is under 35%, though. Meaning, although they were running the ball a little bit, they were struggling to move the chains on the ground, which obviously isn't going to cut it. And this is a Chiefs defense that's almost the complete opposite. In the last 6 games of the regular season, they're allowing 5 yards per carry, over 132 rushing yards per game. Look at the success rate, under 37%. So it's the complete opposite. They don't let you move the chains on the ground here. So although you may look at the last handful of games and be like, oh, maybe Houston can run the ball in Kansas City, I'm going to say probably not. Keep in mind, we already saw this matchup. Week 16, Houston went on the road to Arrowhead. They did average 4.9 yards per carry, but just 84 rushing yards in the game. Success rate per rush below 24%. So, yeah, I mean, I find it hard to believe that Houston's going to go on the road here against a fully healthy Chiefs defense and consistently run the football. I'm just not seeing it, especially if Joe Mixon is not 100%. Then you add on the fact that Houston tends to run more zone blocking schemes. They're 9th in zone run frequency, plays into the strength of the Chiefs defense. Kansas City's 4th in yards per carry allowed, 3rd in success rate per rush against zone runs. So, like I said, reiterating the same point, I don't think Houston's going to be able to run the ball here, which means there's going to be a lot of pressure on CJ Stroud to produce through the air. It's tough. I keep saying the same point. it's tough to make an argument for CJ Stroud just going off on the road in Arrowhead in the playoffs when the Chiefs and Spagnuolo always seem to come out with the best game plan. So if I had to guess, in my opinion, it should be a struggle for Houston offensively in this football game. But what about the matchup on the other side? We got the Kansas City offense against the Houston defense, and this is where you can make some strong points for the Texans. Houston on the season, 4th in yards per play, 4th in success rate. The Kansas City offense, 21st and 8th. So you definitely like that. In fact, if you're betting Houston, this is probably what you're looking at. The Texans defense, they looked dominant last week, so you're banking on Houston to play a great defensive game here. The Chiefs offense is going to be at full strength with the exception of Rice. That's not new. He's been out for a while. Hollywood Brown active, Pacheco active. They're good to go with the exception of Rashee Rice. But there's good news on the Houston side as well. It looks like Al-Shaair is going to play. He's listed as questionable, but from what I'm reading, both him and Joe Mixon are going to play. So the Texans defense should be pretty much at full strength as well. They are missing a couple pieces from the secondary, but that's not new. They've been out for a while now. Obviously, if we're talking about the Houston defense, we need to talk about what happened last week because that was a massacre. Wildcard weekend against Justin Herbert and the Chargers offense. They were held to 4.8 yards per play, success rate under 34%. They couldn't do dick against this Texans defense. Justin Herbert was pressured on over 51% of his dropbacks in the game. It was an absolute domination by the Houston Texans defense in that one. That being said, I mean, we have to mention that this same Houston Texans defense, although they were a little injured, they were missing 2 starters in that game that are now healthy, Fatukasi and Al-Shaair. Both didn't play in this game. But week 16, they went on the road to Arrowhead to this same stadium and played this same offense. And Mahomes really didn't have problems moving the ball in Houston. 260 yards, 6.3 yards per attempt, success rate over 63%, 93.5 passer rating. So although they made Justin Herbert look silly, Mahomes didn't really have problems moving the ball in this Houston defense just a few weeks ago. Houston came out running a ton of man coverage in that game. They actually ran man coverage on 44.4% of their defensive snaps, which was more than any other Houston Texan game of the entire season. Problem with that is Mahomes has been pretty good against man coverage. He's 21st in yards per attempt, 17th in pass rating, 9th in completion percentage. He's been much better against man coverage this year than he has against zone. So I'm not sure if Houston's going to come out and run man coverage again. It didn't work for him last time. And I mean, this Chiefs offense, earlier in the season, people were saying they were getting lucky. The offense would look ugly and they would still find a way to win the game, right? Second half of the season, that really wasn't how it was, especially at the end there. In their last 7 meaningful football games, this offense looks good. 23.7 points per game, 5.7 yards per play, success rate almost up at 53%. I mean, this offense looks really good. This looks like one of the best offenses in the NFL. And like I said, specifically in that Week 16 game against Houston, they didn't really have a ton of problems moving the ball. 27 points in the game, 5.8 yards per play, over 52% success rate. This same Houston defense, yes, I know Fatukasi didn't play. I know Al-Shaair didn't play. But still, this same defense in this same building, they really didn't have problems with it. I know this Houston Texans pass rush is for real. They're 5th in pressure rate, 11th in pass rush grade, 3rd in adjusted sack rate. I know that. There's 2 problems with that, though. Number 1, Kansas City's offensive line's been solid in pass protection all year. And more importantly, number 2, Patrick Mahomes has been excellent under pressure this year. 7th in turnover-worthy play rate, 15th in pressure to sack rate, 15th in yards per attempt, 15th in passer rating. He doesn't really take sacks, doesn't put the ball in harm's way, still able to make plays. I mean, look at this. Yards per attempt from a clean pocket this year, 6.9. 6.3 when pressured. It's almost like he's thrived in the chaos almost. I mean, no matter how much pressure you throw at Mahomes, he finds a way to escape it, get the ball out, 3 yards downfield to receiver who then falls forward for 6 yards. That's a successful play. And that's the story of the Chiefs offense. You just cannot get them off the field. You're not going to see a ton of explosive downfield throws, not a ton of highlights. What you're going to see is Mahomes escape pressure, make a throw that's 4 or 5 yards downfield. 1st and 10 becomes 2nd and 4. You just can't get them off the field. And we just saw them play in Week 16. What happened? Houston couldn't get them off the field. So, yeah, they're a little bit healthier here, but so are the Chiefs. As good as the Houston defense looked in the Chargers game last weekend, and no question they looked excellent, I don't see how we can trust them here on the road, where number 1, CJ Stroud isn't as good on the road, and the Houston defense also isn't as good on the road. but also against the Chiefs offense that just had no problems moving the football on them. And if you look at the Chiefs offense in their last 2 meaningful football games against Houston and Pittsburgh, 2 good defenses, they didn't have problems moving the football in either of them. 6.2 yards per play, 28 points per game, over 52% success rate. So I don't see any reason to try and step in front of this Chiefs offense right now. I think they're peaking at the right time. This was not an elite offense throughout the entire season at all, but they're definitely an elite offense right now. I think they're playing their best football right now. So I don't see any reason to try to step in front of the Chiefs. Am I thrilled about laying 8.5 points in this game? No, especially when that first game, the Chiefs offense looked great, but if Stroud doesn't throw those picks, that's probably a field goal football game. Houston probably has a shot at winning. So am I thrilled about laying 8.5 points here? No. So this is what I'm going to do. So I'm splitting my money into thirds here. I'm betting this game 3 ways. Chiefs minus 8.5. Kansas City team total over 25.5 at minus 108. Houston team total under 16.5 at minus 115. That's what I'm doing. Splitting it up 3 ways. Next game. Washington on the road in Detroit. And in my opinion, this is the toughest game of the weekend. I mean, what to expect from the Lions defense? We're in a tough spot in terms of making a prediction here. We'll go through it. Detroit's laying 9.5. Looks like across the board. Total sitting up at 55.5. Let's take a look at the matchup for the Washington offense against the Lions defense. Washington offensively 10th in yards per play, 5th in success rate. Detroit defense 26th in yards per play, 8th in success rate. So if we're just looking at the raw data, full season numbers, you would say slight edge to Washington's offense here. But honestly, this Lions defense, they're either the worst defense in the NFL or they show up and give us a great effort. It's really tough to make a prediction with this unit. Obviously, the lead story with the Lions defense are the injuries. No Derek Barnes, no Hutchinson, no McNeil. Anzalone is back. DJ Reader is healthy. Pascal is also healthy. He was hurt earlier in the season. Carlton Davis is out. So this Lions defense nowhere near full strength, and this is a Washington Commanders offense that's ran the ball pretty consistently here. Look at the last 7 games of the regular season, over 165 rushing yards per game, 5.5 yards per carry, over 42% success rate per rush. Also, Washington tends to run more gap concept blocking schemes, 10th in the NFL in gap concept blocking scheme frequency. That does play into the weakness of this Lions defensive front. They're 22nd in yards per carry, 20th in success rate against gap concept blocking schemes. The Lions are really strong against zone runs, not really what Washington does. So maybe there's a path to Washington running the football here. I mean, I know the idea of the Washington Commanders going on the road to Detroit against a rested Lions defense and running the football, that's kind of crazy. And I mean, they weren't really able to run the ball against Tampa last week. 82 yards on the ground, 2.5 yards per carry, 32.1% success rate per rush. So those are some really ugly rushing numbers here. I think there's a path to Washington running the football in this game. But like I said, when we're looking at data for the Lions defense, it's just really tough to get a feel. I mean, look at the Lions' last 6 games. Last 3 games were against the Bears, 49ers, and Vikings, and they held those 3 teams to a 26.3% success rate per rush. That's elite numbers against the run. Just 85 rushing yards per game allowed in those 3. But in the 3 games before that, 5.3 yards per carry allowed, over 125 rushing yards allowed per game. That's against Green Bay and Buffalo. So if you rewind back to when the Lions saw some offenses that are capable of running the ball, they actually were getting run on a little bit. Washington is more than capable of running the football. So like I said, maybe the Commanders are able to run the ball a little bit on this injured Lions defensive front. If you look at the battle on the line of scrimmage, it looks like Washington should really struggle to generate push. But obviously a lot of these metrics on the right side, these are full season numbers. Lions second half of the year with all those injuries, not as strong. So yeah, I mean, I do think Washington is able to run the ball in Detroit. The problem is, and the reason it's so tough to get a feel for this Lions defense against the run, is the Lions offense scores so fast and jumps out to these leads that teams are forced to abandon the run. So we're looking at the data and it's like, oh, they average 4.9 yards per carry, but only 60 yards rushing in the game because they were running the ball, but were forced to abandon it. So it's really tough to get a feel. We got this Lions defensive front with all these injuries. We have incomplete data, kind of, because in these games they're jumping out to these leads and teams are forced to abandon the run. So I really don't know what I think about this Lions run defense right now. I do think Washington, if they hand the ball off off and stick to it, should be able to run the ball a little bit on Detroit. But if I'm being honest, I really don't know. Now, what about the matchup for Jaden Daniels? Well, good news for the Commanders is Detroit's been struggling to get pressure on the quarterback ever since all those injuries. They're 18th in pressure rate on the year, 26th in adjusted sack rate. Jaden Daniels should have some clean pockets to throw from, so that's definitely a positive if you're backing Washington here. That being said, Detroit does blitz a lot. They're second in the NFL in blitz rate. Jaden Daniels, not that he's terrible when blitzed, 28th in yards per pass attempt, 21st in passer rating. It's that he's much better when not blitzed. When not blitzed, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Pretty much top 10 numbers across the board when not blitzed. 72.1% completion, 7.8 yards per attempt when not blitzed, 62% and 6.68 yards per attempt when blitzed. So Detroit's going to be sending blitz packages at Jaden Daniels, which should be a positive for Detroit in this one. And the big metric that jumps out is right here. Check this out. So Jaden Daniels, when blitzed, has a 32.8% pressure to sack rate. That's crazy high. 46th in the NFL. So Jaden Daniels takes a lot of sacks when blitzed. Detroit's going to be sending blitzes. Another thing the Lions defense does a lot of is cover one. 37% cover one frequency is a crazy amount, most in the NFL. Jaden Daniels has some ugly numbers against cover one. 36 in completion percentage, 27th in yards per pass attempt, 26 in passer rating against cover one. You could see those numbers compared to his full season numbers, 8th, 18th, and 14th. So Detroit's going to come out blitzing, running cover one, running man coverage. You don't like to see that if you're betting Washington. Now, we do need to give Jaden Daniels some credit. He did play well in the Bucs game, 24 of 35, 268 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, 110 passer rating, over 53% success rate per dropback. So by no means do we want to sleep on Jaden Daniels. I don't really like the matchup for him. The problem is, what can we expect from Detroit defensively? Check this out. I have no idea what to do with this data. I'm just going to give it to you. Maybe you can figure out what to do with it. So in weeks 13 through 17, Detroit looked like they were going to be the worst defense in the NFL. We're talking about a 5-game stretch here against the Bears twice, the Packers, the Bills, and the 49ers. They allowed 30 points per game. 7.5 yards per play is crazy. Over 54% success rate. Look at their numbers against the pass, and that includes 2 games against Caleb Williams, by the way. 9.2 yards per pass attempt allowed, 314 passing yards allowed per game, 61.9% success rate per dropback, a 111.3 average opponent passer rating. The Lions defense from weeks 13 to 17 was looking like it might be the worst in the NFL. How did they follow that up? Oh, I don't know. In the biggest game of the year against Sam Darnold and those Vikings receivers, one of the highest rated passing attacks in the NFL, they held them to 9 points. 9 points, 4.9 yards per play, success rate under 36%, just 166 yards allowed through the air, 4 yards per pass attempt, a 55.5 passer rating in that game. So Sam Darnold and the Vikings passing attack couldn't do shit against the Lions. Here's where it gets a little weird. If you watch that game, Sam Darnold kind of was shooting himself in the foot. I mean, I'm not trying to take credit away from the Lions defense. They played great. Truly, the Lions defense played great. I'm not saying it wasn't a great game for Detroit defensively. They did play great on the defensive side of the ball. I'm just saying they held the Vikings to 9 points. I mean, Sam Darnold had 1st and goal inside the 5 a couple times, came in with 0. I mean, the Vikings could have easily had 23 plus points in that game if Sam Darnold was just competent. He was truly next level bad in that game. That being said, I mean, the position we're in, trying to predict what kind of production we're going to see from this Lions defense, I have no idea. I wouldn't be surprised if Washington hangs 45 points on them. Seriously, I would not be surprised at all. They look that bad for about a month span. I also wouldn't be surprised if the Lions win 41-0. I feel like the range of outcomes on this side of the ball, the Washington offense against the Detroit defense, is so wide that I don't even know how to even go about making a prediction, truly. I'd like to say I believe in this Lions team and what they're doing. I'd like to say this is too big of a stage for Jaden Daniels. But again, I'm just talking bullshit. I'm just speculating. I truly have no idea what's going to happen on this side of the ball. I'd like to say I believe in Detroit. How about that? But then we flip it over to the other side of the ball. And this is where making a prediction becomes a little bit easier for us. Obviously, the Detroit Lions have the edge on this side of the ball. They're second in the NFL in yards per play, 1st in success rate, matched up against a Washington defense that they are playing better in the second half of the season, but by no means would we say the Washington defense is great. They finished the year 14th in yards per play, 16th in success rate. And right off the bat, I'm definitely liking this matchup for Detroit's offense. So Washington's been running a lot of man coverage since they got Lattimore. So since week 13, they're running man coverage over 43% of their defensive snaps, fourth most in the NFL in that span. So the Commanders have been running a lot of man coverage. That is bad news. Good luck trying to run man coverage on the road at Ford Field, because Jared Goff is the best quarterback in the NFL against man coverage, and I actually don't even think it's close. He's first in yards per pass to them, first in pass rating against man coverage. So right off the bat, we're like, okay, Washington's about to come into Ford Field and try to run man coverage against this Lions offense. Not a good start here for Washington. Now, some good news if you plan on betting the Commanders here is Kevin Zeitler's been ruled out. So the Lions are going to be missing a piece from the offensive line. The thing is, the discrepancy between the Lions offensive line and Washington's defensive front, it's a pretty big gap, but the Lions, even without Zeitler, should completely dominate the battle on the line of scrimmage. I really can't see Washington's pass rush being a huge factor here, even without Zeitler out there for the Lions. And I mean, Goff with a clean pocket against man coverage is just crazy. With a clean pocket this year, he's got a 9.3 yards per pass attempt, a passer rating over 122 with a clean pocket. I mean, he's also excellent under pressure. I mean, 12th in pressure to sack rate, 8th in yards per attempt, 8th in passer rating. So it's not like even if Washington is able to generate pressure, that's going to be a huge problem here. Goff's been pretty elite across the board, but given a clean pocket at home at Ford Field against man coverage, I don't know how Washington's making stops. Honestly, that's a great matchup for Detroit. And as crazy as it sounds, it actually gets even better than that. Look at the top right of this graphic. 4th in blitz rate. Washington blitzes a lot. Well, it just so happens that Jared Goff also is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL when blitzed. 4th in yards per attempt, 8th in pass rating, 3rd in completion percentage. So you mean to tell me Washington's going to be sending blitzes at the elite Lions offensive line, who are probably able to pick up a lot of them. You're going to send blitzes at the Lions with that offensive line on the road at Ford Field and sit back in man coverage. That is a recipe for disaster against this Lions offense. And by the way, we haven't even mentioned the run game yet. We'll pull up the battle at the line of scrimmage again. Obviously, Detroit should have no problem, even without Zeitler, creating a ton of space on the ground here. They're first in adjusted line yards, 3rd in run blocking grade, 3rd in yards before contact. This is probably the best offensive line in the NFL when it comes to creating space in the run game here. Washington's defensive front has been struggling to stay on the line of scrimmage all year. 23rd, 29th, and 31st. So in addition to the beautiful matchup for Jared Goff, who's stopping Gibbs? Who's stopping the Lions from running the ball here? Now, we do have to give some credit to the Washington defense. They've definitely done a much better job against the run in the second half of the year. Through the first 9 games, they were allowing 5.3 yards per carry, over 143 rushing yards per game. Success rate up over 42% per rush. In the last 8 games of the regular season, it's definitely better. 4.5 yards per carry, 131.8 rushing yards allowed per game. Success rate down to 39%. So Washington's definitely been better against the run in the second half of the year. And also, we want to mention that they did a pretty solid job against the run last week against the Bucs. Now, they didn't completely shut it down. 101 yards on the ground, 4 yards per carry, 38.1% success rate per rush. Those are pretty much average numbers across the board. 4 yards per carry, 100 yards, 38.1% success rate per rush. Pretty average rushing numbers here. So they didn't shut the Bucs run game down, but they were able to limit it. So that's something. But here's the thing. I mean, this Lions run game at Ford Field, it's just a different animal than Tampa. And I mean, if you look at that second half of the year where Washington was playing better defense against the run, they did play a lot of bad offenses. And if you isolate their games to just the 3 they played against top 16 rated rushing attacks, the 2 games against the Eagles and the game against the Falcons, they allowed 5.6 yards per carry, 48% success rate per rush, over 188 rushing yards per game allowed. So this Washington defense, let's give them some credit. They've played better against the run in the second half, but every single time they've seen a good offense, they haven't been able to stop the run. So on the road in Detroit against this rested Lions offensive line, I just don't know how they're making stops against this Lions offense. And it actually gets crazier than that, because even if they are able to make some stops, we're talking about Dan Campbell here. You got to stop him on 4th down as well. Want to know who struggled defensively on 4th downs this year? The Washington Commanders. 21st in conversions allowed per game on 4th down. 27th in 4th down conversion percentage allowed. So even if somehow Washington's defense is able to make some stops in this game, which is unlikely, but even if they are, they got to stop him again on 4th down, because Dan Campbell's probably going for it, his crazy ass. So yeah, on the other side of the ball, when it comes to the Washington offense against the Detroit defense, I truly have no idea what to expect on that side of the ball. But over here, the Lions offense at home against this Washington defense that's seen a lot of backup quarterbacks in the second half of the year, I don't think they're going to be able to make stops. So when it comes to betting this game, I guess you got to go Detroit team total over 32.5. I know it's crazy, but I don't know how Washington's making stops in this game. Yeah, Detroit team total over 32.5. Like I said, this is my least favorite game of the weekend by far. I really want to lay the 8.5 or the 9.5 that's on the board. I really want to take the Lions, but honestly, I really wouldn't be surprised if Washington's able to score points right back. So give me the Detroit team total over 32.5 is nuts. I know. It's like an Ohio State game. But yeah, I'm going to do it. Detroit team total over 32.5. Wow. Live show. We're probably going to start at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. We got college basketball first. Then we'll do some NFL. I'll throw some NBA in there as well. If you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. Let's have ourselves a great weekend. Please remember to bet responsibly. Hit me up in the Discord if you need me.